Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this evening, Creating Inclusive Classrooms. It's a Macquarie University webinar about inclusive and special education. My name is Andrew. I work in the Future Students team at Macquarie University. Well, just before I hand over to our special host tonight, which is Dr. Kathy Cologon, I'm just going to welcome and acknowledge, on behalf of this gathering, I'm going to take the opportunity to acknowledge the First Nations peoples of Australia and elders past, present and emerging. Now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Kathy Cologon, who will run tonight's webinar. Now, Kathy also has some special guests of her own. Dr. Kathy Cologon is a Senior Lecturer in Inclusive Education at the Macquarie School of Education. She has extensive experience in the field prior to entering academia, plus a decade of educating teachers for inclusion and ongoing research engagement with children, families, teachers and allied professionals. She's published textbooks which have become required reading for undergraduate and postgraduate teacher education for inclusion across Australia and internationally. She has published extensively. Without further ado, I'll now hand over to Kathy and her special guests.
Wonderful, thank you so much, Andrew. And I'd like to, before I begin, also acknowledge the unceded Aboriginal lands on which we gather tonight. And for me, that is the Darug land that I'm on. So I'd like to acknowledge the Watamatical clan of the Darug Nation and the elders past, present and future, and also extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. So I am absolutely delighted to be here today to talk to you about this very important area of study. And those of you who have studied with me currently or in the past will know that this is an area that I'm very passionate about. And I'm really delighted that each of you are interested in this area. So thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for demonstrating your commitment to this important area by being here today. I think one of the important things is bringing an equitable and inclusive world into reality is everyone's business. And by being here, you're demonstrating your commitment. So thank you. So tonight, I would like to welcome you, and I'd like to give you a brief overview of the postgraduate courses in inclusive and special education that we do have here at Macquarie. And after that, I get to have the wonderful privilege of introducing to you some of our current students. So I will introduce each of you shortly, but I'll just have a brief overview of the courses first. So to begin with, I thought that I would just start with a few key features of our postgraduate courses in inclusive and special education. And I know one of the things when we're considering postgraduate study, one of the questions that we really have to ask ourselves is how we're going to find a way to fit that study in amongst the juggle of life. So I think one of the things that you'll be pleased to know is that our courses are flexible, and as such, they're easily tailored to meet your own needs in that juggle that you're doing. So you can complete these courses online and you can study at your own pace and structure the program to meet your personal goals. And I'll talk through some of what that means briefly as we do go through here today. I think it's also worth noting that Macquarie is ranked amongst the top 100 institutions in the world for education. So Macquarie School of Education is a wonderful place to study in so many ways and a very highly regarded place to study. And we have wonderful staff here who foster cutting edge knowledge and skills and who are active researchers and who give you the opportunity to really hear absolutely up to date, cutting edge international research theories, principles and practices. And it's also important to note that studying postgraduate study in inclusive and special education at Macquarie is an academic experience and a really important one, but it's not just an academic experience. It's a wonderful opportunity to work collegially with people who share your interest in this particular area and who are looking to develop ways that we can bring about that increase in equity and inclusivity in education. So at Macquarie, you will have the opportunity to strengthen your critical thinking capabilities that are necessary when responding to a rapidly changing, ever-evolving education landscape. And you'll have the opportunity to do that, including through designing and implementing and evaluating innovative evidence-based practices and solutions to the challenges that we face within this important field. So at its core, contemporary education is about recognising all aspects of human diversity as valuable, positive, wonderful parts of who we are as people. And in doing so, it's also, of course, about ensuring equitable quality learning opportunities for all students. So given this, within our courses on inclusive and special education, there's a specific focus on disability equity education and the development of an anti-ableist standpoint. And if that's something that's new to you, then you'll have the wonderful and exciting opportunity to come to know all about it through your studies at Macquarie. So the aim of the Macquarie postgraduate courses in inclusive and special education is to provide a coherent set of courses of study and professional experience to equip leaders in inclusive education. So students will engage with and critically reflect on contemporary research, apply theoretical learning to practice through developing and learning about viewing the work of others, but also developing your own resources and pedagogies that actively value students in all our diversities. And a key focus will be identifying barriers to education for many students. And that includes addressing some of the common misunderstandings that relate to notions of disability and the impact of a range of social, cultural, political, economic and environmental factors, and developing strategies for addressing these barriers. And those two parts are really important to come hand in hand, because when we are focusing on bringing about equitable educational opportunities for students in all our diversities, we've got to look at what the barriers are, but also very importantly, how we can then address them. So within the courses on inclusive and special education, there is a focus particularly on disability equity education. Now, the courses that we offer can be undertaken full-time or part-time. They do incorporate flexible modes of delivery. They are particularly suited to part-time study because we have many students who come and they're working alongside their study, which is a beautiful mix because it brings together the current experiences that you're having alongside what you're learning, and it's a wonderful way to bring theory and practice together and in a really ongoing way. But you can also study full-time. That's also absolutely an option. And professional experience is an important part of these courses. So you do have the opportunity to undertake a brief practical experience within the courses. And there are a couple of important points to note. So I understand that the majority of people joining us this evening are teachers already, and some are pre-service teachers, and welcome to all of you. So I think for all of you, I think this goes without saying, but this is not a teacher qualification. So if you'd like to work as a teacher, you do need a teacher qualification, but these courses are undertaken by a diverse range of students. So we have a great number of teachers joining us and expanding and growing and engaging in depth in professional learning within these courses. But we also have a wide range of people from allied professions who also come along, and that enriches that shared learning through these courses and the units that you do engage in. So this degree focuses on application of advanced theory and contemporary professional practice to the provision of education founded on valuing human diversity, within which every student contributes to their education communities and their contribution is recognised and valued. So in inclusive and special education at Macquarie, we have 3 courses. So we have the Master of Inclusive and Special Education, the Graduate Diploma of Inclusive and Special Education, and the Graduate Certificate of Inclusive and Special Education. And there is comprehensive information on the website about each of those, but I'm just going to briefly highlight a few points about each of those. So firstly, we have the Master of Inclusive and Special Education. So this course can be completed in 3 years part-time or 1.5 years full-time. It is fully online, and as noted, you can study full-time or part-time, and we do have students commencing in both February and July. The graduate diploma of inclusive and special education can be completed in 2 years part-time or 1 year full-time. And again, it's fully online, and we have intakes both in February and July. And finally, the graduate certificate of inclusive and special education can be completed in 1 year part-time or in half a year full-time, and is also offered fully online, part-time, full-time, and commencing in February or July. Now, in thinking about full-time and part-time study and the juggle with all the other commitments in life that I was talking about before, it's helpful to think about the fact that a full-time load comprises of 4 units of study during 1 semester, so that's the maximum, and each postgraduate unit is equal to 10 credit points. And the total workload for each unit consists of 150 hours spread over the semester. So it's really helpful to think about the idea that you're allocating about 10 to 12 hours a week for each unit, and that really helps you to plan your time. Now, you can choose any of these courses that best suits what you're looking for at this time. However, it's really helpful, I think, to know that our courses in inclusive and special education are actually closely aligned. So if you wish to, you can progress from the grad cert to the grad dip and to the masters. And for many students entering the graduate certificate, it seems like a really useful option for professional learning. And it really is a very valuable opportunity for that professional learning. But we often find that once students have created that space for study and gotten hooked on it, then students often will progress into the graduate diploma and finally into the masters. Because once you figure out how to do that juggle, it's a wonderful thing when you realise the rich benefits of studying in this area in inclusive and special education, and so often students do want to keep going. So the units are fully aligned so that we can be totally responsive to this. So in inclusive and special education, we have the following units, which I've put up on the slide. So we have our 4 research-focused units, within which there's educational research, scholarship in educational studies, Indigenous education strategies and research, and also an opportunity to undertake an independent education project. Then we have our set of 8 coursework units that are specifically focused on the different content areas. So we have disability equity education, differentiated instruction and universal design for learning, effective instruction in math, science and technology, language learning and communication, effective instruction in reading and writing, supporting positive behaviour and student wellbeing, and contemporary approaches to professional practice. So these units make up the courses, all 3 courses in inclusive and special education. So the Masters of Inclusive and Special Education comprises all 12 of these units. So this incorporates a comprehensive course comprising of a rich mixture of units addressing the key areas for contemporary education in this space, along with the research units, which enables you to focus deeply on your own particular interest areas within the research units, alongside engaging in these key areas within the coursework units. Now, the graduate diploma comprises of these 8 units. So it does not include the research-focused units, but it is made up of the content-focused areas that provide a really strong grounding in inclusive and special education and come together as a cohesive contemporary course. So there's lots and lots of things to delve into within these units, and they make up a really wonderful, as I said, cohesive and comprehensive contemporary course. And then we have the graduate certificate. And for many students, the graduate certificate is the focus that they want at that time, but it's also often a jumping off point to delve into the graduate diploma and the masters. And it comprises of 4 of the units from the graduate diploma. So the 4 that I've put up on this slide are the key units for this graduate certificate, but if you do enrol full time, then the particular units you'll undertake will slightly vary from this, but they'll still be drawn from this bigger list of 8 units. So, in a very brief summary, that gives you a snapshot of the courses that we are talking about today. Now, I think that the best people here today to answer the question of why study inclusive and special education at Macquarie are the wonderful current students who you are about to hear from. But just before I do turn to Kathleen, Kathy and Scott, I did want to just highlight a few key points in terms of why you would choose to study inclusive and special education at Macquarie University. So firstly, these courses that I've just outlined for you are highly regarded by employers within and beyond education. So if you're a qualified teacher, then undertaking these courses in inclusive and special education will make you one of a small cohort of highly desirable teachers in both early childhood and school settings. In particular, the master's course enables you to be a master teacher and an educational leader, but these courses are also highly beneficial to professionals in a range of other areas, including allied health services, wellbeing service providers, and education consultants. So employers of our graduates include many schools, early childhood centres and organisations, allied health providers, mental health services, various government agencies, and also juvenile detention centres. And many of our graduates undertake these courses to enrich their professional learning and to develop and grow as teachers. We also have graduates who are allied professionals, educational policy makers, and adult educators, including at TAFE and university. And for current education and allied professionals, undertaking these courses really does provide an enriching form of professional learning. And of course, professional learning is a really important and required ongoing part of the role of educators in a range of professionals. And engaging in these courses as professional learning really enables the development of contemporary understandings in this very important and also continually evolving area. So one of the things is there's so much happening in this space. So it's a really wonderful opportunity to be right up to date with all of what's happening. And as I said earlier, as students within these courses, you will learn from and with current researchers in the field. And within the masters, you do have that important opportunity to focus on your own area of specialisation and undertake your own mini research project, as well as developing those research skills. And this is really enriching and helpful for practice. And it can also be a pathway to roles within educational research, or it can lead you along the pathway towards undertaking research degrees at Macquarie too. And one of the other benefits that I think is really important within these courses is the opportunity to connect with other professionals who are working in this area and studying alongside you. And the opportunity to learn with and from passionate educators and other committed allied professionals is such an enriching experience. And I think it's one of the really remarkable opportunities that comes through these courses that we don't necessarily think about. It's actually the peers within the unit, because you get that opportunity to learn so much from each other and share those experiences that you're having and the ways in which what you're learning applies to those experiences and the situations that you're facing within your work too. And I think this is a really enriching experience, but I also think it can be really helpful sometimes if you do feel a bit isolated. Sometimes when we're working in our own roles, we can feel a little bit isolated, particularly if we are working towards approaches that would facilitate that inclusive and equitable education. So having that opportunity to work together with your peers within the course and develop those online collaborative communities, I think is really valuable. And Macquarie University is a wonderful place to study education. And we do have highly qualified and supportive staff here who do take pride in helping you as students and in developing innovative and practical knowledge and skills informed by a coherent and reflective teaching philosophy. And our approach to learning design, pedagogy and assessment is underpinned by our 5 R's framework, which are capabilities that we see as essential to great teaching, and those being resilience, reflexivity, responsiveness, readiness to learn, and a commitment to research-informed practice. So we look forward to welcoming you to the Macquarie Inclusive and Special Ed community, and to give you a student perspective. It is my absolute privilege and pleasure to introduce you to three wonderful students who are currently studying with us in these courses. So a very big welcome, Kathy, Kathleen and Scott. Thank you so much for being here and for giving your time and sharing your perspectives and experiences. So Scott, Kathy and Kathleen are fresh from a full day of teaching, and Scott is actually mid-school camp. So all of you are very much giving your perspectives right from the coalface in the thick of it all. And all of you've just come to just at the very end of a big semester of study. So thank you for being here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspectives. And I think it's a really wonderful opportunity for students who are thinking about studying in this area to hear from you all. So I wondered if I could start by asking you to share a bit about why you chose to study postgraduate inclusive and special education at Macquarie.
There's a couple of reasons why I chose Macquarie University. Firstly, as I think Kathy said at the start, it's a well-recognised place of learning. And I think that's a really important thing, particularly when you're looking, if you're already teaching and you're looking at doing something that's going to add value to what you provide within the educational setting. My daughter's also studying at Macquarie University at the moment, so there was another avenue, because I think one of the things that's challenging, particularly if you haven't studied for a while, is just knowing your way around the system and finding those little, where everything is. And everything's quite accessible, but when you haven't done it for a while, that's something that was, I guess, another draw card for me. But I also like the flexibility of having the online format. So I think those three things are probably the primary reasons why I chose to study at Macquarie University. The other thing that I'd have to go back and have a look, but the other thing that I seem to remember is there are a number of institutions that offered a certificate or a master's, but there weren't many or as many that offered the graduate diploma. So that was, I guess, a final reason as to why I chose to study at Macquarie.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I also heard amazing reports about Macquarie University from my APs at various schools I've worked at the past, and principals, and it's ranked right up there. So it's like, yeah, I'd like to study with the best. And yeah, just the excellent reputation. That same with Scott, flexible online learning was very important as a full-time teacher and mother of three, and I just needed to be able to do it at my pace, and it's just worked beautifully for me. So I actually started with another course, and it was a learning difficulties and support teaching grad cert, and that one actually collapsed at the end of last year, and I needed to do one more subject, and I found this one, and this one just looked amazing. So I was able to join in with this last course, and it's been my favourite. So yeah, it's been amazing. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, my name's Kathleen. A few years ago, I was looking at studying special education, and I suppose I was doing it to further my current understanding in that field. Also, I was very much interested in just getting started and seeing how I felt. My great motivation for studying at Macquarie was looking at learning difficulties within literacy for special education, and my experience has been that has been very, that was really, really informative, and it really helped me to understand what I was, the questions that I had, and particularly as the course has evolved, like Kathy, I started as a stepping stone in graduate certificate and had moved to the graduate diploma, and I have really enjoyed the structure of this semester with the new course, and I have enjoyed learning about inclusive and equitable education, and particularly the disability justice element of education as well. I found really engaging.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, Kathy and Scott too. I think in some of what you've been saying there, you've already answered the question I was going to ask next. But I wondered if there was anything else you wanted to share in terms of your experiences and the highlights of studying the course thus far. I know you're at different points in the course. For some of you, you're right at the conclusion, and for some of you, you're actually right at the beginning. But the highlights for you at the different points that you're at in this study.
For me, my highlight has been the practical nature of the last couple of assignments. Really, I found them challenging but exciting. So that was so practical. In particular, one that I've been able to write a ukulele program for my students. We've got a mainstream school, but also 4 support unit. 40 children in the support unit, and I was teaching ukulele to the mainstream children and trying to, working out how can I make it inclusive for everybody. And that stretch of me having to think and innovate and research and make it accessible for a wide range of human diversity was so beneficial. And I've got such lovely feedback from teachers and teachers' aides and parents. It's just been very rewarding. So that's been my highlight, is to see the assignments in action and to see the joy on all the little children's faces when they can strum in harmony, like it sounds nice, and it's, and it's not just a token whatever. They really are enjoying it. So the practical part of that has been a highlight for me.
Thank you, Kathy. That's fantastic. And I must admit, you've done a wonderful job of connecting together and really applying the learning to practice. And it's been so fantastic to see that from my side too. It really has. Thank you. And Scott or Kathleen?
I think I'd have to. Yeah. I'd have to agree. I really like the practical components of each of the units. I've always taught supported classes. So every year that I've taught, I've specialised in that area, although I haven't been a learning support specialist, if I can put it that way. So 2 years ago, I had the opportunity, start of last year, I had the opportunity to start working in the learning support department. And I think the highlight for me is that even though throughout my entire teaching career, I've taught supported classes, and for the last 16 months, I've been specifically focused on learning support. I've learnt more in the last semester doing 4 units and working full time, but I've learnt more in the last 4 units than I probably have over my I guess teaching career. And I know that might sound like a bit of a stretch, I suppose, but I think it's an awareness that you don't necessarily know that you don't have. And once your awareness is heightened, you then become more acutely aware of the nuances, I guess, of some of the elements that we're looking at within inclusive and special education settings. So I think that's probably one of the highlights for me, is that there's just that new learner growth from my own perspective about things that I can do to continue to facilitate providing access for kids within the classroom.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. And that's wonderful to hear. And I must admit, when you're thinking about the juggle, it's remarkable that you've managed 4 units and full-time work as well. But I think it's really interesting to hear that. And I think that the point that you're making about the way in which, when you get into the study, in a sense, you get tuned in to some of the stuff that perhaps you're not having something to draw your attention to in the everyday, without that space that you create for reflection and engaging with the ideas of others through study. That's fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Kathleen, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Yes, I really found this year, like I said, was a stepping stone from last year, and finding my feet, I think, and finding my voice in study. And I particularly found that studying accessible approaches to education and the very practical engagement was really worthwhile. And it helped, I think, particularly working together in our tutorials and having those conversations and discussions about the topics, and then being able to think about it further and share in online forums about what we've found or what we've been thinking about. Very rewarding. Also the flexibility of the course being online and is important, because Kathy and Scott are in New South Wales. I am interstate, so it still has immense value working across the country and having perhaps different frameworks that happen within schools in different states, but essentially the content is of great worth across nationally and internationally as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kathleen. And I think that really speaks to the value. Like, I think we don't always realise how valuable it is, because it's not just what you're learning from the course content and those of us teaching it, but from each other. And even as you're pointing out there, Kathleen, the different contexts that everybody's teaching in, including across the country and often internationally too, gives those different perspectives as well. It's another layer added to that. So yes, that's wonderful. Thank you. I guess on the other side of it all, I wondered about fears or challenges, fears that you might have had when you were embarking on this course, and perhaps any challenges that you had and how those have been addressed in what you have been studying.
My biggest fear, because I'm such a people person, I like connection and I like to be able to nut things out together, and I work very collaboratively with people. So when I was a student, I've done a master's online and I found that very lonely at another university. But doing this postgrad certificate, I was a bit worried about that. And in another course, I've met a beautiful friend online, and she's a teacher, and we were doing learning support teaching together, and she lives very close to me. We worked out, so we met up for coffee, did our pracs together at the school down at Macquarie Uni, and just become really good friends, lifelong friends, and our daughters are even friends now. But that's very rewarding for me. And I was going to say, with the isolation part, the tutes really helped me feel connected as well, just like Kathleen said, just seeing the same familiar faces. There's only a small group of us, but it was very nice to see and to chat and to hear, and have that connection was really important and rewarding.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kathy. And I think it is really interesting, because there are so many different ways of making that connection, and you and Kathleen both touching on that. But it's lovely to hear of that friendship that you've developed. And there are quite a few people who do end up finding each other in real time who've connected initially online within the units, and that's fantastic. Any other fears or challenges that came up?
Yeah, I could probably share a couple, I suppose, but I think I've got to echo the sentiments of both Kathleen and Kathy. I found that the online format that was probably one of the things. I was also very unsure about how this would work. The last lot of study that I had done that had been online, you were sent out books and you had posted your assignments in. So this was pretty. I guess a bit of a paradigm shift for me in the way that learning is conducted, within the uni. But I've got to concur with what both the ladies said. It was actually really a really positive experience to be involved in the weekly discussions. I think the way they're structured is really beneficial. I think that you get the opportunity to cover some content, you get the opportunity to discuss it. And then you get the opportunity to reflect on it and to hear what other people are doing. And I think that's a really positive thing. You know, maybe that's a highlight, but it's also, I think, is something that you don't really know coming into a course what you're going to be exposed to. I think probably the biggest fear for me was looking down the barrel of 40 plus hours a week on top of a working week. I really didn't have any idea about how that was going to work. And I think the online component has really helped. I've been very pleased with my results. I've actually done better than I thought I would, given the two workloads, but I've had to put in for it. So I think, you know, the slide that you put up that put in that showed the hours, I think it's an accurate representation. If you want to do well, they're the sort of numbers you need to be looking at to get a good understanding about what each of the units is about, and then just trying to balance that. So my kids are a little older. You know, as I said, one's finished uni, the other one is at uni. So my time's probably a little bit more my own, but you're still staring down the barrel of at least 40 hours plus a week to be able to effectively not only engage in the content and the readings, the lectures, the tutorials, and to get an understanding about it. I mean, we're not at a point in our lives where we're doing these things just to tick a box. This is about personal growth and personal understanding. So, yeah, I guess that was my fear coming in, and I guess that's how it's been addressed, I suppose, to a large extent.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. And I think it is a remarkable juggle that you're doing and succeeding so well at full-time work and full-time study. And I think it's also a good point, the putting in and getting back, because each of you have put so much in. I mean, I've had the privilege to work with each of you in your studies, and you put so much in, and it really does show in terms of what you're producing, and it is wonderful. It really is fantastic. Kathleen, did you want to add anything in terms of fears or?
Yes, I can. I would agree that the motivation for study is that personal growth and the benefit that comes from that. And I agree with Kathy and Scott that participating in the tutorials has been a highlight and has been very beneficial in that support that we've had together as we've worked through content. But at the same time too, one of my biggest fears, I think, was re-embarking on formal university education after 20 years and just rethinking it, finding my voice and becoming comfortable with that process again with such a large gap from my last lot of formal study. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really great that you shared that, Kathleen, because I think that's actually the case for a lot of people. I think for a lot of people coming back to study, there is actually quite a lot of anxiety about it. And particularly because in the last, couple of decades, things have changed so much in terms of how we actually do this. So I think that's a really, really important point. And yet, look at you, here you are, having embarked upon it and succeeded so well with it. It's really terrific to see. I think it'd be great to finish with one last question, and I guess anything else that any of you would also like to add. But I guess the last question I would like to ask you is, what's one piece of advice, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to prospective students that you wish you knew at the start when you were at that point of embarking on the courses that you've undertaken in inclusive and special education at Macquarie, what would that advice be?
I'd probably say just work at your pace and don't feel pressured to get your degree or your other, whatever you're getting, diploma or certificate, in a rush. I took 2 years to do my postgrad certificate because I wanted to put in with my own children at home, and I thought if I don't have time to read stories at bedtime with my own children, something's wrong. So I just took it slow, and even, I'd be up really late at night reading to, my little one, and then she's in year 3, so she's not even that little, but I still like to do that. And I think it just is your journey, and it's really not a sprint. It's just, I loved the depth that I could take with it when I took this course slow, and just it unfolded, and it really was, I just was able to apply everything, and I've shared everything with my colleagues at work, not just to tick boxes, not just to get assignments done. I've read everything. I've got lots of folders full of everything. And yeah, so I think just be confident to know when you're studying, just to enjoy the journey. Don't rush it if you don't have to.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much. And Kathleen and Scott, your one piece of sage wisdom.
I would agree with Kathy that the flexibility is key, that you can take your time and start with a certificate, move to a diploma, decide how you want to use that and what you gain from that, and then whether you want to continue to move on. But I found actually doing the Macquarie University library learning courses very helpful. Initially, it was just like a reminder of what I was doing and where I was going, to just refresh. And that is conducted by the library. And last year it was conducted online. And that helped me to be a little bit more critical about my writing and what I was doing, because I was very, very nervous when I first begun, because I thought I had forgotten how to do it. And as things have progressed, I realised that it's okay. I'm finding my voice and it's fine. So
fantastic. That's really helpful, Kathleen. And you've got the bigger picture there, but you've also got really practical advice, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's such a worthwhile thing to engage with those supports that are available, and then have that practical support as well. It's fantastic. Thank you very much. And Scott, your one starting piece of advice.
I think keep an open mind. I think one of the things that we often do is we can very easily be channeled in a thought process that we have as a perception about the way things are. And I think one of the critical things that I've picked up through each of the subjects that I've done, probably particularly the ones I've worked with, the two that I've done with you, Kathy, is it just opens your mind up to what is available to be able to help students. It opens your mind in terms of how students can access work. I think Kathy's example before, and we heard about it in the tutorials, it is a fantastic one about giving kids an opportunity to access education that may not have had that opportunity previously. So I think that's probably one of the key things. The other one that I found that I really love is studiosity, which is a turn it in, check it in style of thing. You can put your assignments in there. You get not feedback in terms of marking feedback, but language, the way you've structured it, all those sorts of things. And I found that to be really beneficial, particularly, as I said, being, like Kathleen, the best part of 15, 20 years without, being in university. I found that to be really beneficial. But the key thing is go into it with an open mind, be prepared to have your preconceived ideas changed, and create a new awareness for yourself about how you can help support your kids in the classroom.
Wonderful, fantastic. Thank you so much, and thank you to each of you for sharing that. And I think the open mind is really important. This is such an evolving space, and there is so much to think about and so much that we might not have thought about that's coming to the fore. And I think that's so important, but also those practical tips are so helpful. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Scott. I'm going to hand back over to Andrew, who's going to take us through question and answer session now. So Andrew, I will hand back over to you.
Kathy, and also I'd like to add my thanks to Kathy, Kathleen, and to Scott as well. We have had a few questions which have come through on the Q&A function within Zoom. If you have any questions and you haven't asked them yet, please do use that Q&A function, and we will attempt to ask. Then we have just over 10 minutes left, so we've got time to answer a few questions. I'll go through some of the early ones, and then we'll keep on going through some of the more recent ones. Really, this is for anybody to answer, not just Kathy, but Kathleen, Scott, or Kathy, if you have anything that you'd like to chip in with, please feel free to do so. So Amy has said how to create inclusive classrooms for children with behaviour issues of concern. I think this is, I think the question here is possibly, will this webinar cover this, but also how is this addressed within the course? So perhaps Kathy.
Yeah, okay, so if I can jump in at least to start with, thank you for the question, Amy. We do have a unit that is dedicated specifically to looking at supporting positive behaviour in children and looking at the ways in which we set up education settings and experiences in order to facilitate that positive behaviour. And there is so much to think about and so much to engage with and unpack in that space. So we do certainly have an entire unit specifically dedicated to that topic, but it is also something that cuts across so much of what we're studying throughout the course. So in terms of the content of the course, it's certainly something that we very much do address. And it's an important one to focus on, because it is, we know from the research that it is for many, many teachers the #1 concern. So we certainly do focus on that.
Thank you. Marie asks, or Marie says, I'm a graduate of Macquarie Uni and my first job was in the Macquarie University Down Syndrome program. That was in 1985. Do you suggest I return to study at diploma or certificate level?
Oh, Marie, welcome back. It's fantastic to hear of someone from the Down syndrome program. That was such an innovative program back in the day, and it was a really, really important program and gave so much both in Australia but internationally as well. So welcome back. In terms of the question whether you would study at a diploma or certificate level, I think that it's a bit of a matter of thinking through your own juggle in terms of what you're balancing and how much time you have, and whether you're wanting to be full-time or part-time in doing that. But one other thing that question brings to mind that I didn't mention earlier that I think is helpful is to know that if you were to commence in the diploma or the master's and then decide, actually right now, a certificate is the right spot for me, you can actually exit early with a certificate. So whichever way you were to go, you'd have those options available to you, Marie. But certainly I'm sure that you would have so much to bring to the courses as well as so much to learn.
Thank you, Kathy. We have a couple of questions actually from Catherine. Lots of Kathys and Catherines this evening. Hi everyone, I've got 2 questions. I'm currently finishing my degree and I'm working part-time as a learning support officer and in a hearing unit. First question, the 2 questions. First question is advantages or disadvantages of studying the master's over the diploma or graduate diploma. And second question is it best to go straight from one degree to this specialist degree, or better to have work experience first? So she's currently finishing a degree. She says she's organised her family around this for the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Andrew, would you like me to jump in there then?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Catherine, if I'm thinking correctly that you are who you are, hi, nice to hear from you again. I think there's lots of different things to think about in answering those questions. So firstly, in terms of masters over the graduate diploma, I think the key thing there is to think about what it is that you're most wanting to get out of the course right now. So the advantage of the master's over the graduate diploma is that you do engage in research. So if that's something, if you would really like to after all the coursework you've been doing for the last 5 years, if you'd really like to focus in on a particular area that you want to explore further, then the master's does give you the scope to do that in regards to the research units. I think the other thing is thinking about the motivation for why you're doing it. Is this about professional learning and continuing to enrich those all those different aspects of learning and deepen them within the particular focus area of inclusive and special education? Or is it to do with, applying for jobs and I suppose some of the desirability of different courses that way? So there's lots to think about there. But again, I think one of the big things is that you can start with the diploma and articulate into the masters, or you can start with the masters and exit with the diploma. So in some ways, it's okay to be unsure about that. Jump in, have a go, and then see what you think as you're going through. In terms of work experience first or continuing straight on, I think that's also a really interesting question, and I think there's lots to think about. I think when you're thinking through the way that you've created the space for your study and you've got that happening, and 5 years in, it's a well-oiled machine. So I really understand the reluctance to stop, because then whether it becomes more difficult to jump back in. So I think that is definitely something worth thinking about. At the same time, I think going into getting that experience and then coming back does give you a really good opportunity to apply the learning in a very, very real way. I don't know, Kathleen, Kathy and Scott, if you have anything to add on that, but I think it can definitely go either way. There's pros and cons, because it's also about the practicalities, but lots to think about.
I often think that...
Oh, sorry, Scott. You go.
Oh, you.
Okay, I'll jump in. I think what Kathy just said about applying the learning in a real way is what motivated me to just keep studying, and I really loved that. Whereas a few years ago when I did my master's, I did it a bit differently and I wasn't applying it, and I felt like I lost a lot. I just felt like it was a piece of paper. Whereas this is much more rich, even though it's just a grad cert for me. I think I've learned much more than the masters. So really, it's what you put into it and how you use it, I think, at the time. That's my thoughts.
Thanks, Kathy.
Probably a little similar. I think the opportunity to be able to apply the things that we're learning. One of the units that I've done this semester has had a practicum in it, and the thing that I like about that is that you have the opportunity to go out and try the things you've been doing. There were people in our course who weren't working in education, and they still had opportunities to be able to go into schools and practice those skills. I think potential employers, they're looking for pieces of paper that are going to substantiate some things, but they also need some form of demonstration that you're able to use those skills and use them within the workplace. So as Kathy said, it's a bit of a fine balance to try and work out which is which. I had a feeling that Andrew said you may have been already working in a learning support role. I'm not quite sure if I heard that correctly, but I thought that you are doing something like that. Depending on what level of autonomy you have within that role would greatly influence, in my opinion, how you are able to use that. If the support is just making sure that the kids are staying on task, that's part of it. But obviously, if you're in a teaching role, there's a significantly greater, I guess, responsibility, and there's a significantly greater component of ownership that you take over in terms of managing that class, of managing challenging behaviour, as we had a question on those sorts of things before, and being able to use the strategies that we're learning and the awareness that we have as part of this course, and being able to use that in the classroom. So it's a really hard one, unless we're sitting in your shoes, to be able to answer. But talk to the principal at the place you're working at. They can probably give you some guidance as well around things that could be beneficial, and there might be other opportunities that come up as a result of doing it. So have a chat with people who are in positions to make those sort of decisions, and maybe guide you a little bit too.
Thanks, Scott.
I've just got only a couple more minutes. We have got a few more questions. So what I'm going to do, a couple of people asked questions about Commonwealth supported places, and those are available on this course for the coming year. We can't guarantee from year to year that it's going to continue, but certainly for 2022, those are available. there are a few questions about that I'll wrap into one. Somebody asked about how many hours it is in a typical week, the course, and also asks whether it's nighttime or weekend that would be required. And somebody else asks if you can choose the order of units that you do within the Masters or grad dip. So order of units, can it be chosen? How many hours roughly per week, and what's sort of the time of the day that you, or week that you're looking for commitment?
Okay. Well, those ones are nice, straightforward ones to give a clear answer to. So in terms of the order of units, yes, you can choose the order of your units. So we do have a recommended pathway where we can recommend which ones are useful to go before and after each other, in particular in terms of the research units in the research degree, but also because some of the units are intended to be more foundational for the course as a whole, but there is lots of flexibility. The one caveat to that is there are some units offered in semester 1 and some in semester 2, and so you can only choose the units available in each semester. So that's the one restriction on the order of units, but the research units are actually offered across both semesters, so you can do them in either semester. In terms of typical timetable and hours and when and so on and so forth, there is a great deal of flexibility. So we provide recorded lectures. So within the units, you know, we record the lectures and then pop them up for you each week, and you can watch them and listen to them whenever it is that works for you. Same with your readings and the activities that you need to do. There are due dates for assignments, of course, and those are not so flexible. The one thing that is different to that is online tutorials. So those do have a set time. We do try as hard as we can to make those fit in terms of working hours, but it is true that some of those are during the day. There's lots and lots of different things and different people to balance, but you do get plenty of warning about that. And where there are tutorials, you do have the option to listen to the recordings of the tutorials if you're not actually able to be present. How people fit it together depends from one person to another, but for a lot of people, they would be doing a mixture of evenings and weekends, and there's a little bit of a, you know, going along whereby there's peak points where it's study, but if you plan really well, then it's not quite so much the peaks and troughs. But you know, life happens, and for most of us, there's the peaks and troughs as we go through. But there's a great deal of flexibility and very little that's set in terms of when you have to do it. So that does enable that flexibility for working. I think that covers all of that, Andrew.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions very quickly. Amanda asks, the invisible disabilities, depression, anxiety are definitely on the increase at my school and generally, I believe. Does this course address this, and how, please?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Amanda. And certainly it does indeed. So we do have a focus on all of the different aspects of human diversity across the course. So we have a two-pronged approach, in a sense, to that particular issue. So within the unit on that focuses on behaviour, it's also focusing on well-being. So those aspects that you're talking about particularly come to the fore within that unit on behaviour and well-being, and simultaneously embedded throughout all of the other units, we are looking at all of the different aspects of human diversity, and we're making a conscious effort to keep coming back to that. So we do address it in both of those ways. And the third thing that I would say is, if it's a particular interest area for you, then I'd really encourage you to consider the Masters and to think about whether that might be the area that you would like to focus your particular research within the Masters component of the courses. But it's certainly a very important aspect of what we do address within the course. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Kathy. The very final question, I'm just going to bundle two together, is there's someone who has a background in nursing and someone who is working in childcare, two different people. How will the degree benefit people with those backgrounds?
Yeah, fantastic. Wonderful.
From a career perspective, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that the courses are very, very useful for people within allied professions, and it is a wonderful thing because we get to share those different experiences. I think, Scott, that was you mentioning earlier, that the fact that some of the people who we do have currently as students within the courses are coming from quite different backgrounds to education, and they really do have that opportunity to share and learn and grow. In terms of early childhood, we have many people who are early childhood teachers and who are working in early childhood, and we really look at children and students across the whole age range, and that's really important. I have a particular passion for early childhood, so that comes very readily to me. But it's the key things that we're focusing on this unit actually apply to people at any age. So it's equally applicable in early childhood as it is even in adulthood. So we look at different elements and how those apply on a practical level. And there's lots of scope within, for example, the assessment, where we're actually asking you as students, and Kathleen and Kathy and Scott have really, really applied this in different ways to the different ages of students that they are working with, but to look at what's actually important for these students in the age that you are focused on. So for early childhood, it's very applicable. And in terms of nursing, I think that the core ideas that are underpinning this course are just as important in all of the allied professions and very much in nursing. And I can certainly speak from many different hats in terms of why it is that these ideas are so important for nursing too. So I think that you would find it very valuable, and we certainly do have wonderful feedback from allied professionals who do undertake the course and find it really useful. And we really work to create the space so that you do have the opportunity to learn about the application within education, but also that we're looking at it beyond education as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Kathy. Let's go to the slide now as we finish. And as we finish, I'd like to say thank you very much to Kathy and to Kathleen and to Scott and to Kathy for sharing your stories with us this evening. Thank you to everyone who joined us this evening, for everyone who visited. And a reminder that the session has been recorded and will be shared with you after the event. Where can I find out more? Well, you can visit our course page for inclusive and special education courses, our master, graduate diploma or graduate certificate. You can see the web address there, courses.nq.edu.au, and search for inclusive or special education. You can also, if you have more questions, book a personal consultation now. You can see both the web address there. We've also got a QR code, so if you would like to do that, do feel free to use take a photo on the QR code to visit that page and book a personal consultation. And apologies that we have gone slightly over time this evening. That was because we wanted to get through all the questions, which we have. And it's been good that you've had lots of questions to ask this evening, and we do encourage you, if you have any more, to book a personal consultation, to visit our webpage and find out more. So thank you again to everybody this evening, and we hope to see you at Macquarie University soon. Good night.